south of the border, down Mexico way. That's where I fell in love when the stars above came out to play. And now as I wander...
Hello there, all you expat wannabes. I'm Johnny Mueller, and you're listening to the Expat Files, Living in Latin America, the show that tells you just what it's like to live, work, play, and or retire down here in Latin America. It's a mix of the good, the bad, the ugly, and the great, and it's all right here, so let's get started.
All right, first an email. We've got so much to talk about today. This one comes from Horace. He says, Johnny, I've been listening and enjoying your podcast for the past 2 years or so. As an electrical engineer myself, I have particularly loved your series on solar panels. You did an outstanding job. Please keep producing technically oriented shows. Your information is priceless, and I'm working on my own plan B, hoping to persuade my wife to come on board and come on down. That said, I would appreciate if you could send me the portable water filter details you mentioned on your recent show. You know, I look forward to every Friday and Sunday release of your podcasts. Regards, Horatio. Well, Horace, thanks for the kudos, but I didn't read your email just to toot my own horn. I read it because you said you especially enjoyed my series on solar panels. Well, just wait, Horace. Since in a past life I was both an electrical engineer and a biomedical engineer. You know, us engineers got this kind of weird gene in our chromosomes. Seems we all have certain electrical, mechanical, and technical obsessions. And it seems it starts when we're kids, and later we become engineers. I'm talking about how we become obsessed with science and certain electrical and mechanical things too. And for me, it's been many things. In the early days, cars and motors, also astronomy, and then precious metals, gold, silver, platinum, palladium, and the like. And for a long time, I was into esoteric, high-quality, hi-fi stereo systems, including guitar amplifiers, especially tube, or what they call in Europe, valve jobs. And you know, the thing is with us engineers and scientific types, those obsessions are always there, but they come and go. And for me lately, at least in the last 10 years, one of my big obsessions is getting off the grid, solar power and the like. But most importantly, doing it cheap and efficiently, but still maintaining your first world style of living. And so, Horace, when you mention you particularly like my podcast on solar panels, well, you ain't heard nothing yet. In fact, I was thinking in this show that I would completely fill all you listeners in on my own portable solar energy system, the one I got maybe a half a year ago, as well as tell you about the latest and greatest system that just came out January 2020 that pretty much supersedes anything I've ever seen before. And again, I get not a single dime from anyone, no click-through money, nothing, for recommending this stuff. Anyway, I've got a really, really good portable solar system that I'll go into probably next show, though we'll get into a little bit of the meat of it today. Now, my system I picked up a half a year ago is great, but there's a better one that just came out. So if I didn't have a system and I had to go out and buy one today, whether a portable system or permanent, I'd buy this new system made from a company called Titan in a second. Now, by portable, I'm talking about a system you could have up and running and the panels set outside in maybe 20 minutes. A solar system that's powerful enough to give you all the electricity you need for an RV or a cabin up in the woods. Of course, you'll use it at home, too, if there's a power outage or grid down. And it's got to be a system you can throw in the trunk of your car and just take off and go anywhere with. You know, my portable system that ran me around $1,500 or so fills all those needs and more. However, like I said, if I was going to buy a new system today, I'd definitely pick up one of these brand new Titan all-in-one systems. Why? Well, because the batteries are stackable. In other words, you can buy the unit as a basic portable unit with 2,000 watts of battery power and turn it into a permanent off-grid system too. So the basic 2,000 watt system is a perfect portable system. That's plenty of power. Now, that basic kit, which costs around $4,000, I know that's a lot, but you get 500 watts of solar panel with it. Of course, a system like that's too small to run an air conditioner, but the beauty of this system is you could stack additional batteries. They literally stack on top of each other and hook right in. And each battery pack adds another 2,000 watts for around $1,400 each battery pack. Of course, with more power, you'll have to add more solar panels. But man, the guys at Titan who make these things have considered everything. They've solved almost every problem in solar you could think of. And surprise, surprise, they're made in the U.S., though I'm sure most of the parts, including the batteries, are sourced to China. So what else do I really like about this system? You know, the big problem with having a big solar system is the batteries weigh a ton. That's why all the very good portable solar power stations are between 1,000 and 2,000 watts. Any more power and the battery gets way too heavy for one person to haul around. For example, the portable system I have right now has 1500 watts and weighs around 35 pounds, making it just fine for portable solar, but not good enough for anything permanent. And that's where this Titan system comes in. You can buy the 2000 watt unit, and guess what? The head for the unit weighs around 30 pounds, and each additional battery you buy for it locks right in and adds another 30 pounds. So suppose you have 5 batteries. That's 10,000 watts. That would be equal to or even above and beyond what you'd need to run a small home. So let's do some numbers. 30 pounds for the head and 5 batteries times 30. That's a unit that weighs 180 pounds. Impossible to move around. However, the way that Titan unit's been designed, you just flick 2 switches and the bottom battery drops out. And you've just jettisoned 2,000 watts. And each battery has a handle on it. So if you want to move that 180-pound, 10,000 watt tower, remember, we're talking about a complete off-the-grid system. If you want to move it to another location, it only takes about 5 minutes to knock the thing down. It'll break into 6 30-pound segments. Just toss them in your car and you're off to the races. And here's another very important thing. You know, these portable solar units, although some of the high-end ones like the one I have are great, they're limited as the amount of solar power you can put into them at one time. To charge the battery by day, that is. But you see, even my unit, which was the best available about a half a year ago now, will only accept a maximum of 500 watts of solar panel. Anything above that is wasted. It won't charge the batteries any faster. Now here's the thing, that Titan system I was telling you about, it accepts up to 2,000 watts of solar panel input. And man, that's absolutely fantastic and all you'll ever need for a small house, family of 4, let's say, off the grid, running everything, even an energy-efficient air conditioner. In fact, when that Titan unit first came out in January, I was amazed to see it accepted up to 2,000 watts of solar panel. That's pretty hefty. A great starting point for anyone who wants to get off the grid completely, whereas 500 watts just won't cut it. For a portable system, yes, but not for a complete off-the-grid system. That's really all you'll need if you're here in Latin America, that is. As long as you don't have electric heat, which no one does here in Latin America, and you don't have an electric stove, which is kind of stupid. You've heard me say, get propane gas. That's the absolute best way to go. And if you have a couple of 50 or 100-pound tanks of propane, you have enough gas to run your stove and oven for probably a year. Talk about being independent from the corporate energy swine. Man, I'll tell you, does that feel good? So again, stay tuned to the next show or the show after that when I finally have enough time to thoroughly lay out for you the solar power system I'm using right now, along with my new #1 pick, the Titan system, which, by the way, comes in many configurations, and I'll tell you the best one to get. Oh, and another thing about that Titan system, you can order a complete kit, including everything, all the cables, solar panels, everything. You can set it up right away. And you know, in this case, I recommend buying it that way, in a kit. Why? Because the system's perfectly matched at the factory to the solar panels for maximum output and efficiency. Oh, and another cool thing, when you order the Titan system as a kit, you got 2 choices for solar panels. Choice 1, regular solar panels, you know, your standard high output aluminum frame panels with glass tops, and those things can weigh 30 or 40 pounds each, which doesn't make them very portable, especially if you're ordering 5 or more. However, the Titan people have sourced a flexible solar panel that's so light that makes it truly portable, with a 20-year solar output guarantee, which is something flexible solar panel companies don't like to do because as you flex them, they start getting tiny little micro cracks and that degrades their efficiency, but not so with these particular panels. In fact, they've got a kit called the 2000 Flex Kit that comes with 20 100-watt flex solar panels, and it turns out they're so thin and light, they fit into a nice reinforced carrying case with a couple handles on it. In other words, one person can move all 20 of those panels around anywhere at one time. Now, personally, I think flex panels are great for portable systems. I'd never want to use them for a permanent off-the-grid system because, yes, they are flexible, but that's a downside when you want a permanent solar installation. You have to somehow mount them and support them on your roof enough so that the wind doesn't pick them up and carry them away. In truth, they're too light and flimsy to leave up on your roof forever and ever. So those Titan kits offer you a choice between the solid, regular, very heavy solar panels that you can only carry 1 or 2 at a time versus those very light, flexible solar panels that are just so convenient to haul around. Just perfect for portable installations. All right, enough said about that. There you have a little preview of what's to come in the next show or maybe the show after. Believe me, what you're going to hear is absolutely on the cutting edge, extremely up to date, what I recommend and what I really think you ought to put some serious thought into. By the way, when you go on the Titan website, and listen, I'll give you all that information when I do the show on it. And I'll have a new report for you, too, on all my updated solar recommendations. Anyway, you'll see that every one of their systems and kits is on back order for months. Oh, and people always ask me, how long will these systems last? Just note that most decent solar panels have a 20-year rating. That means after 20 years, they'll still deliver 80% of their rated power. Though with lithium batteries, there's a different rating system. We'll talk about that too, because it depends how many times you charge and discharge them. So, for example, you'll often see on the ratings of a lithium battery system that it's good for 1, 2, or 3,000 cycles. Now, for lithium batteries, once you start using them and draining their power, when you get to 20% of full power, they got to be recharged or you'll damage them. So, what's a full charge cycle? From 100% to 20% and on up to 100% again. That's one charge cycle. Now, for example, if the specs on a unit say it's good for, let's say, 1,000 cycles, when you initially crank out the numbers, the life numbers, how long it's going to last, it doesn't sound that very good. Let's use that 1,000 cycle figure. In fact, my own portable system, which I'll be talking about on next week's show in great detail, it's rated at 1,000 cycles too. Again, that's from full charge down to 20% and up to full charge again. Of course, you don't have to worry about the fact that when a battery gets down to below 20%, it's going to get damaged because the electronics in the unit takes care of that for you. It turns the system off. That's why a solar system's instruction manual will always say you have to charge it up at least once a year, because over a year, if you haven't used it at all, it might just drain very slowly down to that 20% point. You don't want to get below that. All right, let's quickly do the numbers on a lithium battery with 1,000 charge cycles. Well, there's 365 days in the year. Divide that into 1,000. That means your batteries have about a 3-year life. That doesn't sound too good, huh? That's not what you signed up for. You want that thing to last you 10 or 20 years, right? Or more. So then why is Johnny saying it can easily last 20 years? I'll tell you why. Because no matter if you're talking about a portable unit that's only used once in a great while or a permanent unit that's used every day because you're off the grid, almost nobody, that is if you size your system right, will use so much of the battery that it discharges from 100% down to 20% every single day. That almost never happens. Normally, and I've seen many examples of this, people with a permanent setup might routinely discharge their battery down to 60 or 50%. In fact, a full discharge down to 20% per day might only happen when it's been raining or cloudy for a couple of days in a row. So chances are you'll discharge your battery down to 50%, maybe every day, not to their 20% limit. Now, remember, your panels are working all the time that the sun is out. And for many people with pretty good-sized solar systems, the battery's only used at night. That means during the day, if you got enough wattage, let's say 2,000 watts of panel like you can put into the Titan unit, those panels will charge up the battery for a couple hours, and the rest of the hours where the sun is out, the extra wattage coming out of your panels will be powering up the things in your house. Well, then, barring clouds and rain, your battery just might be cycling every day between 100% and 50%. That means your battery's not being stressed nearly as much as a battery that goes down to 20% of its maximum charge every day. And under those conditions, you should be able to get 3, 4, 5, even 10,000 cycles out of it. So think of the battery charge life cycle data and the specs as the absolute worst case for your battery. And that's a situation that rarely happens with the average off-the-grid house whose battery and solar panels have been sized correctly. Oh, and by the way, the Titan system I'm talking about has a 2,000-hour charge cycle rating. So if you divide 2,000 by 365 days, you get around 6 years. That's absolute worst case if you're draining the battery to its limit every single day. Again, that almost never happens. So then what can you expect in the real world? I expect the average person with a nicely matched system could get 20 years out of it. By the way, I'm putting together a little report right now, tentatively titled, How Much Solar Power and What Kind of Solar System Do I Need for My House? Of course, it'll be geared to people living in Latin America where you don't have any heating concerns. But it'll be just as useful a guide if you're living in Canada, Minnesota, or Cleveland. Though again, the problem is up in the States, in most places you get maybe 4 good hours of sun each day, and here in Latin America you get more like 7 or 8. In a future show, I'll talk about that too. And I'll give you a link to an excellent resource I have, a site where you plug in your state or country. Then it gives you a breakdown of your sun's radiance over the day. That really comes in handy when you're deciding on the wattage of your solar panels. You heard me say a while ago that for a full off-the-grid system, you need at least, or minimally, 2,000 watts of solar panels. Again, we're talking about here in Latin America. You'll need twice that or more if you're up in the Midwest. So if we go with 2,000 watts, That's about 7 or 8 standard 300-watt panels, the kind you can get on Craigslist or OLX.com, for around $100 a piece or so, at least down here. Of course, when it comes to the number of panels you'll need, it's all about the angle of the sun, and it's much more perpendicular to the Earth as you get towards the equator. Thus, when you're living in Latin America, your solar system, whether portable or permanent, will only have to be half as big and half as costly as a system you'll need to power your stuff up in the States. So hang in there and stay tuned. I'll be talking about all that stuff and more in the next few shows. Oh, and don't forget, I'm always around to do a phone consult with you on anything and everything having to do with living, working, playing, and doing business here in Latin America, as well as any questions you might have about setting up solar, water, and or LP gas systems. So if you need to talk, send me an email, theexpatfiles@gmail.com. Which brings us to the next email. This one comes from Mr. J. He says, "Hi, Johnny. Hope all is well with you and you're staying happy and healthy. I'm sure your emails are accumulating rapidly with people like myself who haven't left the States yet. I'm currently studying for my Chartered Financial Analyst card and ultimately starting a hedge fund. The attractiveness of Puerto Rico is hard for me to ignore with the tax incentives for my type of business. I haven't heard your opinion about Puerto Rico, but I can guess you're not a fan. It's really expensive there and probably an easy target for any U.S. adversaries. What's your opinion about PR as a 6-month resident and with the other 6 months living in some other Latin country? I remember you weren't a fan of Argentina as well, and I can't remember why. Something about Doug Casey. Oh, and I'm glad, Johnny, you moved your seminar to August. I'm definitely planning on attending. The July date was conflicting with Freedom Fest in Vegas. Our plan is to visit Puerto Rico, Guatemala, and Argentina late May. Is there anything you can do for or recommend for stragglers that come down not during your seminars? Thanks for everything you're doing with the great information and hilarious opinions on the podcast. Kindly, Mr. J." All right, Mr. J, let's plow through some of these points. Puerto Rico, I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. It's a U.S. territory. They're completely bankrupt, beyond bankrupt. Not only that, they've had a huge brain drain to the States because, they automatically get a U.S. passport, so there's no problem. As long as they can get the airfare, they can go to the States and just hang out forever there. For them, it's perfectly legal. And, after the hurricane, it was like Venezuela. And also like Venezuela with a very serious brain drain. So what you got is a bunch of puddinheads left behind who are either broke, just living paycheck to paycheck and not really motivated to do much of anything else. Now, where have I heard that before? I hate to say that, but I'm telling it like it is. It's so true that almost all the Puerto Ricans and Venezuelans I meet who are living outside their country are really pretty creative and motivated people. They know how to survive. And they knew their countries were basket cases, so they found a way to get out early. However, I know rags like Sovereign Man and Sovereign Individual, which are pretty good rags, by the way, in some respects, except they're pushing Puerto Rico all the time as this superb tax haven because you pay no federal taxes. The problem is they're doing it because the infrastructure is absolutely destroyed, dating back to the hurricane. Thus, they voted in all those tax breaks. Well, there's already talks and legislation in the works planning to take those tax breaks off the books or severely modify them. Of course, I think they'll grandfather people in who've already taken advantage of it, but you can never trust politicians, especially with a country that's tied at the hip and really totally dependent on the USA. And, Mr. J, I know quite a few people who live in Puerto Rico, and they're telling me the same thing. Lots of rich people have moved into certain areas of San Juan where the prices are now higher than in New York. Bottom line, they have big problems in Puerto Rico. I would not want to be there. Oh, and Mr. J, you mentioned how I wasn't a fan of Argentina. Well, they just defaulted again on a big chunk of their sovereign debt. Inflation's at 50%. And now, if you got a bank account there, they've got currency controls. There are 3 things in life that are certain: death, taxes, and another Argentine default. In fact, no country in the modern world has defaulted on its sovereign debt more times than Argentina. This will be nationwide bankruptcy number 9. Number 9. Number 9. Number 9. Bottom line, Argentina, I would never recommend it for a plan B. Oh, and by the way, I noticed in the last year or so, when Doug Casey puts out a report, he's not doing it from Argentina anymore. He does it from Uruguay or Chile, but not from Argentina, where he has a huge estate, a winery, and a bunch of real estate in that development called Estancia. Funny how he's kind of completely disassociated himself from that project. Whereas just a few years ago, it seems like every week I got some kind of blurb in my box about buying land or property in La Estancia, Doug Casey's version of Galt's Gulch. Then suddenly, nothing. It's as if the place went dark. And people I know who are kind of close to the project are saying it was a good idea that turned out to be a big mistake. Can't win them all. Glad I didn't get sucked into that one. By the way, I've had more than a few Expat Insider seminar attendees tell me they've been down to the place, checked out the real estate and the winery, the swimming pools, the horse riding, the whole bit. And all of them came back thinking something's just not right. I'm not going to go into it right here, but next time you run into me personally, ask me about it. Oh, and Mr. J asked in his email if there's anything that I could do for stragglers who come down to Guatemala or Central America, apart from the seminar dates. Well, as a matter of fact, Mr. J, after disassociating myself from that lady Jen Bird, who was secretly swindling and stealing from people. She was the one whose father was a very good friend of mine, John Galt, and then when he died, she took over the John Galt tours from her dad. And then over time, she started secretly stealing from me and others. Oh, and there's a little matter of PayPal fraud, too. They're going after her for that. Oh, and it gets worse. She stiffed a Guatemalan hospital for over 25 grand. Then, some months ago, she escaped to the U.S. and is in hiding. A lot of people are after her. So, as you might imagine, that was the end of the John Galt tours, which, by the way, I endorsed wholeheartedly when her father was in charge. Though I had no stake in it, financially or otherwise, I did refer a lot of people to the John Galt tours. And it was a great success until he died and his daughter took over. You know, the fact is, when people come down here to Guatemala and Central America, they need to have someone put together an itinerary for them, give them something to do, show them around. Sometimes they're looking for hospitals, doctors, clinics, real estate, health insurance, business deals. They're looking to get residency, set up bank accounts, meet our Bitcoin and crypto guys, or just do some exploring, whatever. Everybody's got a wish list. And if you don't know anyone down here and you're just getting information from me by listening to the show, people really did need a go-to person, and John Galt Tours provided that and more. That is, when Tom Bird, alias John Galt, not his slick-fingered daughter, was in charge. So then what about people showing up in Guatemala in Central America today, or more precisely when the travel bans are lifted? Well, I'll tell you, the lady who's in charge of the logistics of my Expat Insider Seminar, her name is Rita. She's been working with me a couple of years now. She's an absolute fantastic organizer. Everyone loves her. She speaks perfect English and is extremely efficient. That's why Princess and Carnival cruise ship lines have got a contract with her to take people on excursions to see the pyramids, to explore the Mayan ruins, to see the rainforest, the coffee fields, the Spanish colonial cities, and Lake Atitlan, the most beautiful lake in the world, and of course the beaches and the volcanoes. So, bottom line, whatever you have on your checklist, my seminar logistics lady Rita can help you with that and more, including taking you to check out real estate, rentals, help you get a bank account, buy a car, hook up with MDs, dentists, hospitals, and insurance companies. In fact, when it comes to medicine and healthcare, she's really got it down because her dad's a physician. Not to mention, for years, she's been working hand in hand with my favorite Latino lawyer. So, bottom line, if you come to my next Expat Insider Seminar, you'll surely meet her. She's hanging with us all the time. And if you come down before or after the seminar, or any time in between, Rita is the go-to person that'll hook you up with practically everything you need. Even if you're just coming down to explore and that's your only goal, she can set up a fantastic itinerary for you. You know, everybody who's been down here will tell you, we've got a great setup and a great network. A one-stop shop for getting that Plan B on steroids. Got the lawyers, the doctors, the hospitals, the insurance plans, rentals, agriculture, crypto. We've got everything covered. Now, my next seminar is scheduled to launch Friday, August 21st, finishing up Thursday night, August 27th. You know, at the seminar, you'll be drinking from the fire hose, all right. However, if you come down and it's not seminar time, just send me an email to expatfiles@gmail.com and I'll hook you up with Rita. And she'll Skype or WhatsApp with you for nothing. You can lay out your plans and she'll help you accomplish them. And she's one person I have 100% confidence in. I know some of you might be thinking, well, Johnny, you didn't do so well with Jen Bird. Well, the fact is I had 100% confidence in her father while he was running the John Galt Tours and the concierge operation. But when he unexpectedly died and the baton got handed over to her because of the family connection, we thought the John Galt trips could go on as usual. Because, as they say, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. Who'd have thought that such a likable, smart, honest, noble, and trustworthy guy's only child would turn out to be such a bad seed? I'm sure you've heard the saying, I never met a con man, in this case a woman, I didn't like. So anyway, all you emailers who've been asking me about those John Galt trips, they no longer exist. That's why I brought it up. But there is the fact that people like Mr. J want to be able to come down to Guatemala and places in and around Central America and have some knowledgeable person to connect with. And we have all that and more with my seminar logistics lady, Rita. So again, if you're coming down, send me an email, theexpatfiles@gmail.com, and I'll hook you up with Rita right away. All right, one last email. This one's from Scott. He says, "Hey, Johnny, been listening since day one, and now my wife is finally on board due to this COVID-19 PSYOP thing. Seems like they're following the Event 201 script to a T. What a coincidence, Johnny. By the way, can you send me Mr. B's info regarding teaching English online?" Then he says, "Johnny, when are you going to get rid of that gulag mail?" He's talking about Gmail, "and switch. You're a bright guy, Johnny. Can't be too hard to forward your saved emails and set up an auto response to direct people to your Start Mail or Proton Mail address." All right, me, Johnny, let me take that one. Well, Scott, you're right. I hate Gmail, but you have to remember, when I first started this show 10 years ago, I had to have an account for this show, and Gmail was accessible, and there were no such encrypted services like Start Mail or Proton Mail. They didn't exist 10 years ago. And now, after receiving something like 100,000 emails on Gmail, and having ever so often to eliminate 10,000 or more, just to stay under the maximum capacity limit. Well, problem is, Scott, although I hate Gmail and everything that's got to do with Google, I really don't want to spend the extra time and effort to switch to a completely other mail account. Aside from that, I have other email accounts where I talk to my family and such, and I have 2 that are encrypted and 1 encrypted end-to-end. So basically, I've got 4 email accounts, each for a specific purpose. And I realize, of course, having a Gmail account is like hanging your dirty underwear on the clothesline in your front yard. But since I also use a VPN 100% of the time, I get practically no pop-up windows at all, because advertisers and marketers can't really home in on where I'm coming from. But you're right, I hate Gmail, and I would never have selected it at all, knowing how they spy, mine, and sell your data. But we didn't know that 10 years ago. And, people who I deal with confidentially and who do consults with me and need my help for various things, I always use my other, much safer emails to communicate with. However, if you're just talking about non-critical, run-of-the-mill stuff, Gmail will serve. So go ahead, call me lazy, call me foolish, call me irresponsible. I just don't want to spend the time and effort to pull everything off Gmail and move to another service. Meanwhile, I'll continue to diss Google and all its malignant tentacles, including YouTube. Even though you may be thinking I don't practice what I preach, remember, I don't have an Instagram, Facebook, or even a Twitter account. How many people do you know who can say that? I bet none, unless you count kids under 10 and your 93-year-old grandma. Oops, we're getting towards the end of the show now. I'll finish the rest of Scott's email next time. There's a lot more, so stay tuned. You've been listening to the Expat Files, Living in Latin America. If you need some help with your own Plan B, we can schedule a one-on-one phone or Skype consult. Just send me an email, theexpatfiles@gmail.com. And if you want to get on the waiting list for my next week-long Expat Insider Seminar in Central America, where you're guaranteed to get a 2 to 5 year head start on your Plan B, send me an email, theexpatfiles@gmail.com. Nos vemos.